communication. And also there are some questions added into the shared drive, so make sure you go through that. So far we have covered manage solution scope and requirement, manage requirement traceability, and maintain requirement for reuse. Today's class, there are two topics which we will cover, which is prepare requirement package and communication requirement. So then this chapter is over. So let's move on. Any questions so far, Nikita?
No.
So how do you feel? It's going well, right? Not very fast, not very slow.
Yeah, that's good, because I'm trying to see if I can print it and keep it, because then I can study.
This is a book, right? This book you should be able to. This is the book. If you're not able to print the book, just tell me. I'll try to share a book with you. Okay? Because these slides are directly from. Sorry.
Nothing I can print. I cannot print anything. It's because I.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I may send an email to you. You can have that PDF version of it. I have my personal copy.
Oh, okay. Then I can at least take it to print. Because
Yeah,
I had
that
book,
PDF you will be able to.
It's different. I have the same IIBA book that I think I printed 2 years back. But it's a different version. I don't know. It's maybe something changed, because it's not the same that I think
Yeah, what Adios have is the pretty latest version, and what I am going to send you is the latest version, because I have the membership from them.
Yeah.
So I'll send you. Just drop me an email, okay? Just one test email or something. I will remember to send it across. Okay.
Okay.
So today class won't take much time, I guess, depending upon how bigger the topics are, and then that's how it would be. Okay. So prepare requirement package. Now we are talking about that, okay, we have the requirement and we need to package it out, means make smaller packages. That's how it is. So first understand the purpose of it. When we say the purpose of this phase, what exactly it means? It means to select and structure a set of requirements in an appropriate fashion to ensure that the requirements are effectively communicated to, understood by, and usable by a stakeholder group or groups. So always, as we know, let's say we are working on a project, we have claim, we have member, provider, then we have a portal, member benefits. So always it is recommended to group the requirements together so that it can be packaged together. So let's say if you are working with the stakeholders where you do not need to go over all the requirements, you just need to go over all the requirements member related. So in that case, what happens? If your requirements are packaged, then you have a smaller audience for your invitation. So it helps in every aspect of the project development throughout the life cycle once you have that packages, the requirements packaged together. We'll see what exactly in detail how it is done. Now, from the description perspective, it should be presented in a format that are understandable by stakeholders. Is there any specific standard they are talking about? Yes, there are. The task describes the work required to decide which formats are appropriate for a particular project and its stakeholder. Some of the companies, some of the corporations have their own way how you will create a package, which is called as work packages. They must be clear, concise, accurate, and at the appropriate level of detail. Requirement documentation should be created only to the extent needed to assure clear understanding by the team. So as I said, every corporation can have their own definition of a work package. So some companies will say, okay, one-liner requirement, how much time it is going to take, who is the responsible person, then what is the start date and the end date, all the parties involved with that, all these things considered to be a one package. Corporate to corporate, that can differ. So depending upon the project, depending upon the company you are working for, you need to decide what kind of a package definition they have, which they want you to use as a business analyst. It also helps to decide how to present requirement. And here are some of the additional details. The question is how detailed to do the requirement need to be. What information is important to communicate? What is the appropriate level of detail to include? So as I said, who is doing, how much time they are going to take, all these things can be part of your work package. Now, moving forward, what other things anyone can consider? What will be the particular stakeholder understanding based on the type of audience they represent and on the stakeholder's preferred style of communication or learning? In the sense, when it says preferred, it could be, you can think about whether they are talking about that, okay, very formal template perspective, or they are talking about that, okay, you just list out the details which you are looking for, and that can be provided through an email or verbally, either way. Then you have the requirement package presentation and format, and the requirement contained in the package appropriate for the type of audience that needs to review it. Now, again, the type of audience plays a very big role, because if your audience is little bit technical, you can add some technical information. On the other hand, if your audience is not at all technical, then there is no way you can add any technical information. I'm just giving an example. Now, how does the requirement package support the previous and subsequent phase, that is the testing, implementation, or any other activities or deliverables? Possible forms of requirement package may include formal documentation, presentation, and model. What is formal documentation? It usually based on a template used by the organization, such as vision document or software requirement specification, or you can say the business requirement document. These are all different type of formal documentation. Then you have the presentation. It's a simple presentation in the PowerPoint where you are defining the high-level overview of the functionality delivered by the solution. So you are not breaking down each and every requirement. Let's say if you are enhancing the claim engine, you will say that, okay, the claim engine will be enhanced for XYZ requirement. Very high level, you are providing that in the presentation. Models. It may be presented only in the form of a model, such as process map captured on the whiteboard. So these are the different type of documentation which your project may have to support the overall functionality of the project. Now, these all things comes under your package. Let's see what are the input. When we talk about input, business analysis communication plan. Always plan plays a very big role, and we have studied business analysis communication plan in the previous sections also, but now we are going to talk a little more over here. It describes the stakeholder group, its communication need, whether a single requirement package or multiple requirement packages are required. Business analysis communication plan will also define the level of formality that is appropriate for the requirement. Level of formality in the sense, let's say you are having a recurring meeting. Every week you are having a one session. The minutes have to be captured. And based on the minutes, you have to create an action plan. You have to create a to-do list. So this is a very formalized process. And all these things are captured in your business analysis communication plan. Then it comes down to organizational process asset. Again, the asset is anything which exists in the company, any template, any format, any guideline, any policy. All these things are considered to be a process asset for the organization. Then you have the real requirements. B must understand which requirement will be included in the package. Requirements may be packaged at any point in their life cycle. So, as it says, it can be packaged at any point in their life cycle. So let's say you have started working with the claims module. Once you started working with the claim module, what happened? You realize later during the development phase that something needs to be added as part of this work package. You can add it. That's why it says that the package at any point in their life cycle, you can add that. Requirement structure. It should contain a consistent, cohesive, and coherent set of requirements. What it means, the structure means it has to be consistent throughout the requirement. It shouldn't be the case that, okay, for one requirement you are having a different structure, different guideline. For another requirement you are going to have a different structure, different guideline. No, that should not the way how it should work. Moving on to the next elements. Under elements, what are the things available? Work product and deliverables work product. Work product is a document or collection of notes or diagram used by business analysts during the requirement development process. So your work product could be anything: meeting minutes, survey, interview questions, notes, draft version of the BID. All these things comes under your work product because you worked, you facilitated the session, and that is the outcome of it. That's why it's a work product. Then you have a format. Depending upon the type of requirement, the presentation technique may vary and specific format may have been selected during development of the business analysis communication plan. What it is trying to explain here, that whenever we talk about any specific type of a document, not necessarily that you must have a specific format, but there are some cases where you have a very specific requirement which needs to be explained in a particular format. That's what it is. So for example, let's say you are writing a standard operating procedure, standard operating SOP. Yeah. What is SOP? It sounds so technical, kind of a very big thing. Nothing. It's a simple, for example, let's say you are working as a customer service representative. If somebody is calling you, there are some standard procedure you need to follow. That, okay, you first introduce that, okay, if you are working for a company, you are ID number so and so, and then you introduce that what kind of a services you can provide. Based on the customer feedback, you help the customer or you resolve that customer issue. Now, either that resolving steps are documented somewhere and you are following that and helping the customer. That steps which are documented, which are captured, are called as standard operating procedure. So there is a particular type of a format for, if you have 10 workflow, you are going to write a you are going to use the same template to write all the 10 workflows, and that gives you the format. Now this is the overall picture of requirement package input output diagram. So you have business analysis communication plan, organizational process assets, requirement structure, which we will study in chapter 6. Then we have requirement package, which is chapter 4, which we are doing it right now. And then you have the communication requirement. So right now, as we are discussing about the requirement package, we discussed about the purpose, description, what are the inputs, what are the elements. Moving on. These are the techniques which are part of requirement management and communication. Requirement documentation. Throughout this chapter, we will see there is lot of enforcement towards the documentation. As it says, the requirements are frequently captured in a formal document. Many templates for the requirement document exist and are in common use. Most common type of requirement documents include business requirement document, which is your BRD, product roadmap, software or system requirement specification. These are some of the examples, but not everything. You could have plenty of, like any flow chart, any business process model, any kind of a standard procedure, standard operating procedure. These all things are considered to be a technique where you have a formal documentation. Then we have requirements for vendor selection. If the solution team thinks that a potential solution is available from an outside party, the business analyst may capture the requirement in the form of a request of information, request for quote, request for proposal. Now, these are the different terms which are used, and I will elaborate on this where exactly it's used. Let's say the company is trying to engage some vendor in their day-to-day activity. So there are multiple vendors available in the market where the company will reach out to them and they will something called as RFP, request for proposal. So what company will do, let's say you are working for Aetna, for example, and Aetna is looking for some vendors to outsource its vision claims. What Aetna will do, Aetna will send out a RFP, which is request for proposal, to all the different vendors who can help them and give their quote for the vision claims processing. So that is your RFP. But again, how the RFP will be captured, the business analyst may be involved to write the RFP, because you need to provide the right piece of information. Based on that, all the vendors are going to respond back with our request for quote. Okay. If the vendor have some additional question, they may come back to the company saying that request for information. They may come back and ask for RFI, which is called request for information. So these are the different terms which are used for the vendor selection procedure. But again, these are part of the business analysis world. That's why we keep hearing all these words interchangeably. Stakeholders. Stakeholders are, again, throughout the chapter we are talking about the same stakeholders, where we have the domain subject matter expert, end user, end client, any regulatory affair people, project managers, subject matter experts, sponsors, testers, QA, developer. All these are part of our considered to be a stakeholder. Now, after doing all these, applying all these techniques, what is the final outcome? The final outcome is now we have the requirement package. Now, what exactly did we get? Result of this task is a requirement document, presentation, package of requirements ready to be reviewed by stakeholders. A package may contain all of the project requirement or may be broken into several packages. Now, as it says that the end product what we have got is the requirement package. How? Because what we did, we captured everything, formal, informal, whatever way it was, standard operating procedure, and everything contributed to some level of formal documentation. And that formal documentation is the end product of which is called as requirement package. So now finally we have received the requirement package. Now, the last topic in this chapter in requirement management and communication is your communication requirement. What is the purpose of it? Why do we do that? The communication requirement is important to have a very clear understanding with the stakeholders and a common understanding with the stakeholder. That means that whatever one person says, everyone have a same level of understanding. There are no variations in terms of that every person thinks in a different way. No. And when it comes down to the timeline, communicating timeline, deadlines, deliverables, it becomes very manageable if you have a planned communication along with the stakeholders. So that is the overall purpose of it. Now, what is the description? The description is communicating requirement includes conversation, notes, document, presentation, discussion, concise, appropriate, effective communications require that the business analyst process is significant set of skills, both soft as well as technical. The communications and skills is the chapter 8 which we will study in detail, but at this point of time, your communication means everything, every single note which you have captured, whether it was one-on-one, you was in the elevator and you captured, every piece of information is considered to be part of the communication requirement because that was communicated to you, formally or informally. This is the overall picture of communication requirement and we have already covered the communication management, communication plan, requirements, requirement package, communication requirement, that's what we are doing it right now. And then we have already discussed about the output, which is the solution, scope, and requirement, which is a key for any business analyst. Let's understand the input. What exactly is the input? So input perspective, we have the BA communication plan, be a communication plan which divides what information is to be communicated, which stakeholder needs to receive it, when communication should occur, and form it should occur in. Now, as it says, it's talking about a communication plan. That means everything is happening in advance before you start acting on it. Then we have the requirement, any requirement, whether it is in a piece of paper, email, presentation, any kind of a requirement. Then we have a requirement package. The requirement package may be communicated without being in a requirement package, but if a package has been assembled, it must be distributed, reviewed, and content must be communicated to the stakeholder. So what it is saying, it shouldn't be the case that, okay, you created a package, but it was not approved. Approval process in the sense that, okay, if you are creating a business analyst process, then what you need to do? Then you need to, if you are creating a business analyst package could be your business requirement document. You need to make sure you communicate it. It is well reviewed by the stakeholders before it is considered to be closed. So your business requirement cannot be closed unless it is reviewed and signed off, and everyone have the consensus on that. So these are the inputs. Then we are talking about the elements. What are the elements? The elements are, number one, general communication. What do we do with the general communication? The general communication is the preferred communication which is performed iteratively and in conjunction with most of the tasks in other knowledge area. In many cases, requirement communication may lead to elicitation of additional requirement. How come that is? Elicitation is what? Elicitation is your gathering the requirement. Now, how the communication is going to help in that? Communication is going to help that, okay, what is the project kickoff date, why we are doing the project. All these information are key information when you are facilitating the requirement elicitation process. Enterprise analysis task, business case and solution scoping information is communicated. So yes, during the elicitation, you have to lay out the boundaries that, okay, this is my boundaries, this is what I am going to do, this is how the structure of the project should be. Then you have the elicitation task. Elicitation task techniques require specific communication skill. Communication of requirement may be useful during elicitation activity as it helps stakeholder to identify other related requirements. So when it says the elicitation task, that means which knowledge area, which particular requirements you are going to look into. If, let's say, you have a requirement associated around claims, you need to make sure that your claim information is getting well communicated to the stakeholders and all of the, just hold on please. Hello, Nikita.
Hi.
Yes, sorry for that. Okay. Okay. So coming back to the elicitation task, as I said, during the elicitation activity, there are several things which gets communicated to the stakeholders. And the example which I was giving, like if you are working on the claim, you need to tell that anything outside of the claim which is not getting impacted will be out of scope. How do you make that statement? You make the statement when your communication is very clear. So in your business requirement document, you may say that, okay, the out of scope area will very clearly define that what is in scope and what is out of scope. Similarly, requirement analysis task, when you are performing the analysis, you need to know whether the requirement needs to be redefined or the requirement needs to be rewritten or the requirement needs to be finalized. Okay, you need to know that. Now that is the purpose of doing the analysis, so that you understand the scope of it, you understand the impact of it. Then you have the solution assessment and validation task. When you have the solution assessment and validation task, that means whatever requirement you have created, for that you first finalize whether that requirement, what you have created, feasibility analysis, you do that. And find out that what are the things, what are the components involved for the solution. Once you have that, that means you know that you did the assessment for your solution and now you are validating it. Validation means what? Whether what you are going to do, whether that something can be, is it doable or not. You are validating what solution you are going to build, is it in line with the requirement or not. So first you did the feasibility analysis and you did the assessment, and then later on you are validating it, whether your solution is in line with the requirement, in line with the stakeholders' need or not. Then you have the presentation. Before making any presentation of the requirement to an audience, determine an appropriate format for the presentation. The formality of the presentation is driven by the objective of the communication and the audience need. When you are working on, see, for the project manager, there are many things, many presentations what we need to provide as a project manager. And that project manager is responsible for providing the status update to each and every executive level stakeholder. And what are the things they look into? The number one thing is they are worried about how we are tracking the project, how we are controlling the quality of the project, whether the project status is green or red or yellow. Green is like, okay, we are on time, everything is going green, there is no deviation, there is no variance. When it says red, that means there is some kind of a red alert where that variance is high and we need to worry about. Yellow means, okay, we are falling behind, there are few things which are not in the place where it's supposed to be, but still it is controllable. So a presentation may be used for what? To ensure that internal project quality standards have been adhered to. What else? Ensure cross-functional fit with other business process areas within the same project. Obtain business acceptance and sign-off. So number one project line is talking about that proper quality standards are met or not. So there is some guidelines, there are some policies for the quality standards, and they are expecting every project to follow that. That is there or not. Cross-functional fit with other business process, that means let's say you are doing a project for claims. There are other requirements related to member side. You need to make sure that the member impact on the claim is captured and the claim impact on the member module is captured. Otherwise, if everyone is looking at the requirement in an isolation basis, the project will be no success. It will be of no use. Then it comes down to business acceptance and sign-off. We need to make sure that that communication management plan have a very clear picture how the final product will be accepted, and that needs to be communicated. So you set up the meeting, you ask that, okay, what will be there before you accept this product. So they will give their level of comfort that, okay, these are the set of standards we are looking in the project as a final product. If the final product have all these merits or the qualities, then the product will be accepted as good to go. Now, when they say that, that gives you the very clear acceptance criteria. That means whatever solution you develop, you need to make sure it aligns with the acceptance criteria, because you know that's how the user is going to give you the final sign-off. That needs to be part of your communication management. Formal presentation, informal presentation. So formal presentation is your well organized, structured, everything is there, who are the audience who are going to receive that, who are the audience who are going to be participating in that and approving or rejecting that material. That is the formal. Informal is that, okay, you just have a meeting, some kind of, and you are having a status check, and you have the team who is providing the status every day. So that is kind of informal. That's not a full-fledged formal presentation. Now, when you talk about the technique, there are two techniques which we will study in chapter 9. Technique perspective, there is a requirement workshop and structured walkthrough. Let's first talk about the structured walkthrough. Structured walkthrough is nothing but it's a proper way of reviewing the documentation. So you set up the meeting just for reviewing the documentation, reviewing the management plan. That's what the structured walkthrough is. Requirement workshop is nothing. It's part of the requirement management initiative, requirement analysis initiative, where you keep a small workshop where people will come, all the parties will come and join on a regular basis, and you will discuss about the requirement, in scope, out of scope, and that's what it is. So how do you phrase it? That's what it is. Walkthrough means you have something as a startup point and you are moving forward. Workshop means you don't have any baseline, you don't have any background, and you are just trying to build it up. That's what the difference is. Stakeholder, all the parties, subject matter expert, and client, and user, developer, again, these are all considered to be a stakeholder. After we go through all these things, then it comes down to your output. What is the output do we get? We get the formal communicated requirement. So stakeholders should understand what the requirements are and their current state. So it is not talking about your requirement communication plan. It is talking about communicated requirement. That means now using all these techniques, you well communicated what you are looking for, by when you are looking for, and what you are looking for. So you have communicated everything to the stakeholders, and now you are good to go and move forward. This communication requirement, you are going to have it on time-to-time basis, because that would be changing. So if your project is in implementation phase, your communication is going to change. If your project is in the requirement phase, your communication is going to change. So depending upon what phase where you are, what is the level of status of the project, your communication is going to change. So now, any question?
Is like what format, like all the documents, is all this standards, do they follow the company's guidelines like SOPs, or it doesn't matter? Because all the requirements and communicating with the stakeholders and everything, does it have to be special format that we have to do everything, or just
I would say
like
most of the company, but not all of the company. But most of the companies do have something called organizational asset, which is your all kind of a templates. Okay. Most of the companies have, because these days companies or organizations are very process driven. So they already have most of the templates defined. But wherever you don't have the template defined, you don't have to panic. You can create your own document, and you can see, you can think about it. If you are setting up a meeting, you don't have any template to capture the meeting minutes, you can create one by your own. Whether it's a Word document or whether it is an Excel. All the participants, what is the date, how many people accepted, means how many people were there in the meeting, present in the meeting, how many people were absent in the meeting, that is the attendance. Then what was the agenda, out of the agenda what are the topics you discussed, and after that what are the topics which are closed and what are the action items. All these things you captured, so you created your own one meeting minutes for that particular day, right? So like this is how you go. That particularly you can do it if you know that, okay, if it is, let's say that something was supposed to be delivered by today, which is January 21st. If the detail was not delivered today, that means the status have gone yellow. So let's say after 2 days, if you still do not have, then status from one meeting to another meeting, the status goes to yellow. The moment you pass that meeting, the status goes on red because you are way behind on that particular deliverable. You will be able to make that status green, red or yellow depending on, because people will be talking about it. Okay, no, this one I need it by tomorrow. This one I need it. Okay, you have some time. That one I am not worried about. So according to that, you will be able to make a judgment whether the status is green, red or yellow.
So it's like in an Excel worksheet we can create whatever the discussion is, next meeting date is, and what's the outcome, and then next meeting. I mean, you can continue using the same Excel worksheet until you finish the project, right? We can do that.
So what you do is, let's say you created a template, right? Empty template where you just have the titles, right? Like who are the people who was present, who was the people who was. So it's a blanket template. It's just a template. You don't have a data. Every meeting you fill out that template and save it with that date.
Okay.
Right? So that's how the operational asset also work. Like, okay, you take a template and keep saving it for the date for when you made some changes.
Okay.
So if you don't find it, you can create one. And you will understand that what are the things needs to be there, because when you go to the meeting, automatically you see the need of it. Anytime additional information is never harmful, but yes, I would definitely say too much of information like who said what is definitely harmful. You can maintain it for your own draft copy, but don't distribute it. Otherwise, it will create lot of back and forth. So if any topic is closed, then close it. Just don't display that, okay, it's closed by so-and-so person. Just close it for everyone. But internally, you can maintain a log that, okay, when it was closed, who provided the information and all these things.
And then when you gather all the requirements, doesn't that like project manager review them before we can go over with the stakeholders? Like
project manager is not required to have the requirement understanding. Project manager is expected to have a very in-depth knowledge of project management, so that the project is within the control. But for the requirement perspective, business analyst is accountable for making sure that the requirements are correctly captured.
So project manager does not come in the picture until the final document is done.
Project manager will be participating in it, but not necessarily he will contribute to the requirement. That whether what you have captured is right or wrong. He may be sitting, but not making attention, because that's not something expected from him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So if you are sending some emails to him and expecting his response, make sure you have a one-on-one with the project manager, kind of a word-to-word, so that he is following your email. And otherwise, you don't want to get lost. Yeah. Okay. Any other thing? Any other question? Good.
No. Good.
Okay, great. So we are down chapter 4, and next class we'll start chapter 5.